Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. I quickly wanted to start this reading vlog because today I actually want to start the first book for it. So I decided to do a reading vlog of like horror thriller books written by Indigenous authors, and this is something that I'm very intrigued by. I think that the books by Stephen Graham Jones have been very popular the last couple of years, but I haven't really gotten around to his writing yet. So yeah, it's not like something new, but then there have been quite a few books coming out recently that I'm even more interested in. The one I want to start today is White Horse, and I don't really know how to pronounce the author's name yet because I haven't started the audiobook, but I will learn it there. But the author is of Apache, Chickasaw, and Cherokee descent, it says on her bio on Goodreads. And I don't really know a lot about the book, but it sounds very intriguing because I think it is about a woman who's kind of more on the edgy side, and I think her mom is dead and she inherits a necklace, and this necklace is in some way haunted. So I think that sounds very intriguing, and I'm just so interested to see the kind of perspective on the horror genre that we get now from these Indigenous authors. So yeah, I will start the book today and I'll update you once I'm halfway through and when I'm completely through, and I'll let you know how it goes. But I also wanted to quickly mention the other two books that I want to read for this reading vlog at a later point in time. Then the next book I'm really interested in is Bad Cree by Jessica Johns, and this is a Canadian author, and Cree seems to be a kind of name that is leaning on the French, I think. So they do use a different name in the community, and that is kind of the background that this novel uses as well. That's why it is called Bad Cree. And I think it follows a woman who has nightmares, and she also wakes up with like a dead crow's head or something like that in her hand. So it definitely sounds very intriguing, and it's very high on my list. And then the third book that I've heard about and I'm quite interested in, I think this one is more of a thriller. It's called Moon of the Crusted Snow, and the author is actually also Canadian, and he's Anishinaabe. So I don't really know what this book is about because I just heard really good reviews and put it on my wish list. But it says here, with winter looming, a small northern Anishinaabe community goes dark. Cut off, people become passive and confused. Panic builds as the food supply dwindles. So it seems like kind of this almost apocalyptic scenario. So yeah, these are the three books that I think I will be reading. So let's just hope they're all 5 stars, to be honest. So I'm halfway through White Horse now, and I thought I'd give you a quick update. So far, I'm really enjoying the book. I really like the tone, and it has that kind of like noir vibe also with the cover. The cover is absolutely stunning. Like usually my phone will use my like audiobook cover as a background for my phone. So it's so cool to look at this cover all the time. It's very, very pretty. I really like it. And I think it fits the vibe of the book very well. So basically we're following our main character of Carrie, who is trying to figure out what happened to her mother after her cousin showed up with a bracelet, and this bracelet is basically haunted. So as soon as Carrie touches the bracelet, she starts seeing the ghost of her mother, but also other things that she doesn't really know what they are. So she's going on this hunt to figure out what's going on, and usually she has some kind of like a dream, and then she will go to the place where the dream took place and try to find the hints to kind of get to know her mom and just figure out what happened. Now, the story of Carrie's family is kind of tragic because Carrie's mother disappeared when she was only a couple of days old. And her father was so sad and in anguish that he started drinking, and he had a car accident that left him with brain damage. So basically he is disabled now, and Carrie also has to take care of him. And so she doesn't really know anything about her family. She doesn't even know her grandparents on her mother's side. And this whole bracelet haunting thing now leads her to figure out what she hasn't known for all of her life. She's in the middle of her 30s. She's a single woman, and she's very happy with that. She doesn't really want a family or a partner, but she's teaming up with her cousin, who is a white woman, and she's married and has 2 kids. And so this book also deals a lot with the discrepancy of these 2 lives, because they have a very strong connection, but they kind of butt heads because how different their lives are, and they don't really understand each other's lives so well. So that's also a major theme in the book. And apart from that, we also learn a lot about the history of the kind of like Indian movement there. So that's something I really don't know a lot about, and I wish I had the physical copy so I could Google more, because sometimes it's hard for me to hear things and then know what to type into Google to learn more. But yeah, there's a lot about the protests in the 80s and 90s that might have something to do with the disappearance of the mother. So I think this book has just a lot going for it. I would say if you consider this horror, then don't expect like a spooky horror. Like the haunting isn't all that like spooky. I think the author could have used some more descriptions to make it a little bit more spooky, but this is definitely more of a horror thriller where it's more about figuring out the things, and the horror lies within the system and within these things that happen to women in this area, and especially obviously Native American women. So yeah, so far I'm really liking it. I love the main character. As I said, I just love this kind of noir vibe. She likes metal, and she's a bartender, and she's just like really cool, and I think it kind of works. Like sometimes you have these cool characters, but you're only told that they're cool, but with her, I really feel that it's coming through. And I also like the dynamic with the cousin, because it's just very delicate, I would say. Like if you have family, you probably can relate to it a little bit. And then also this deals with the best friend that our main character had when she was a teenager. So she was kind of a wild girl, like taking drugs, being drunk all the time, skipping school and stuff like that. And she had a best friend called Jamie, and we learn that Jamie is not around anymore. And so we also have that kind of tragic story, and I'm intrigued to see whether that will relate to anything, because right now it's not really clear whether it's connected to the other things. So I'm very intrigued to see about that. But yeah, so far I'm really enjoying the book, and I'm intrigued to see where it goes, and I'll definitely update you once I've finished it. It's a very fast read. So I finished White Horse, and I still need to give you an update. Now, to be completely transparent, it has been quite a while since I finished that book, and I simply forgot to do the update. So it might be that my thoughts are not that great right now, because I might have forgotten a couple of things again. But overall, I really enjoyed White Horse. I gave it 4.5 stars, and I had a lot of fun reading this book. I think that the audiobook was also a great experience, and if you are into audiobooks, it's definitely one I would recommend. And the ending was like very satisfying. I think that we dive into a very important topic in this book, actually multiple important topics. On the one hand, we have the whole theme of like, especially Indigenous and Native American women going missing and nobody really cares about it. On the other hand, it also deals with kind of violence in the family and abuse in the family and stuff like that. So there are a lot of like very important themes in here that I think worked quite well. It never felt like something that was added for just shock value or anything like that. I would have wished that some things would have been explored a little bit more, especially since there is a lot of talk about the like men that our main character's mother supposedly met up with and that they were dangerous. And I felt like that was always something that we get told, but we actually don't know anything about that at the end of the book. Like, were they actually dangerous or not? Who were these men? Stuff like that. So I would have wished to see a little bit more of that to maybe counteract kind of what certain characters want us to believe. But apart from that, I think it's such a well-rounded novel and I just had a very good time with it. The thing that was a little bit much for me is the part during the end when it gets to be kind of like a homage to The Shining. I'm not a big fan of The Shining, to be honest, so it just got a little bit much for me personally. If you haven't read the book or haven't seen the movie, I think you will also not get some of the references, and it has been a very long time since I did both of these things, so I probably didn't get all of the references. And yeah, so that's something that I could have skipped over a little bit, like just shorten it down a little bit, maybe make it not so dependent on that story. But it is a story that is very important to our main character, so it kind of makes sense that it is also important to the story. But yeah, just personal taste, so to speak. It was not my favorite. But apart from that, I would definitely recommend this book. So if you're into that kind of like horror, thriller, kind of mystery, cold case story, then definitely pick this book up. It's very good. And so now I think I want to go into a couple of spoilers. So if you have not read the book, then definitely jump over this part. One thing I wanted to mention, and I don't know if it is considered a spoiler, is the whole marriage theme we have with the cousin of our main character. So basically we do see quite a lot of the relationship of our main character and her cousin, and that cousin is married to a man. They're both white, so it is from the white side of the family of our main character. And they do have 2 children, and we kind of see that marriage through the lens of our main character, who is very concerned about the safety of her cousin and the children. And it was at times very hard and frustrating to read about that marriage for me because it was so toxic. And I think that our main character definitely has a good like gut feeling there, but she doesn't really know how to deal with it. And so in some instances it was quite painful to watch how she's trying to protect her cousin, but she doesn't really know how to communicate what she feels. And so yeah, there were quite a couple of scenes that I found to be very hard to read because like female friendship is like something that I think can be very complex, and that is shown here. So while these 2 characters, the main character and her cousin, they love each other very much, but they also have some misgivings about each other. And so it was great to see some development of that at the end. But yeah, some moments, some things were said that I wasn't the biggest fan of. And I think that just the husband, it was a lot. And the cousin always being like, oh, but he's a good man. And I'm like, is he though? Is he? As I said, I think the book did quite a good turnaround in the end. But there were a couple of scenes where I was like, girl, like, don't. And so, I think it was quite an optimistic view of a marriage like that. So, that was definitely something I struggled with. And then we have the whole like family story from the other side of our main character's family. So the Indigenous, Native American, Indian side, whatever you want to call it. And with that, I would have liked to just get a little bit more. I feel like I did not quite understand all of these characters in all regards. Like, sometimes I wished I would get a bit more, especially with the grandfather. I think Michael was his name. But yeah, I would have wished to, yeah, we get these, like, how do I explain that? We learn that he was abused as a child as well, and so he had this very dark side to him, and he always thought that he can't get rid of that he's tainted and he can never go back. And so he kind of decides for himself to leave his, like, Indian heritage, I guess, because he feels like he's too far removed from that to ever go back. And I would have liked to just get a bit more of that, because I think that is such an interesting perspective, and obviously it shows the ways that trauma can work and how we blame ourselves for things that happen to us, and that can lead to us then hurting others again. And so we basically have this, like, generational trauma that we see that is, given from one person to the next in this family through the things they do. So the grandfather then abused and physically hurt the mother of our main character, who then gets killed because she wants to stop that. And so now our main character never had a real mother. And yeah, I thought it was just so interesting to see these, like, ripple effects that this has on, like, so many generations, what happened to them. And so I guess I would have liked to kind of see more of, like, where the rippling comes from. Like, just expand that a little bit more. That would have been so interesting. But yeah, we also meet the sister of our main character's mother that she didn't even know existed. And I could really see where she was coming from, the way that she tried to remove herself completely from that family that she couldn't trust. So that was very interesting as well. And I think that, again, the novel managed to round it out quite well and just come to a very good conclusion at the end, I would say. So yeah, this was definitely a great book and so many interesting themes explored. I definitely did not see the ending coming, and I think that we have this supernatural kind of hint to it, but it's never too much, and the, like, real perpetrator is still a person, and even though he is a monster, it's just never made to be unbelievable, I would say. So I really think that this book really walked the fine line of being somewhat supernatural, but still very, very human in its storyline. So yeah, loved it. Highly recommend. And I'm already very excited to get to the next book for this vlog. So I am now halfway through Bad Cree, and I wanted to give you an update. So far I am really enjoying this book. It definitely has a very similar feel to White Horse, but right now I think it won't quite live up to it, if you know what I mean. But in this book we are following a young woman in Canada, and she starts having very weird dreams, and she wakes up and she has a crow's head in her hand still that she basically took from the dream. And after a couple of minutes, it disappears, and so she doesn't really have proof of that anymore. But her dreams start getting weirder and weirder, so that she decides that she needs to do something to figure out why she's having the dreams and what she can do about it. And so this is also a story about family history, about tragic events in a family. We have multiple deaths of family members in this book, and at the forefront of everything is the death of her older sister Sabrina. And we learn very late how Sabrina actually died. So just before the halfway point, I would say. So that was quite surprising to me because usually that's like something you learn quite early on in novels like this. And so it has a lot of like this mystery where you don't really know what happened. You don't really know why our main character is feeling the way she's feeling. And I think that this definitely adds to the atmosphere in the book. I really like the idea of these dreams and the way that they're described, but I do find that now reaching the halfway point, I am getting a little bit frustrated with them as well because I feel like we're not really getting anywhere. Like the dreams at the beginning, they start like getting creepier and creepier, but I feel like right now there isn't much movement in it anymore. And so I'm a bit worried that it will drag in the second half now because it doesn't really get going. So we'll see whether I'm correct or not, but that's like the biggest issue I have right now. I do enjoy the main character. I always like reading from perspectives of people who are not like very privileged. So she is just working in one of those like pharmacies. I don't really know like North American pharmacies, I'm sorry, but one of those like famous ones, Walgreens or something, I don't know. And so she's working there. She's working with one of her cousins who is queer. So the cousin uses they, them pronouns, which I think is a nice addition. And it's just handled like a very natural, normal thing, which I really appreciate. And so yeah, she's leading like a pretty like average normal life until these dreams start happening. And now moving along with the story, she then decides to go back to where she's from, where her family lives, and kind of confront these things. I wish it would be a bit creepier, like the whole idea with the crows is kind of ambivalent because on the one hand some of these scenes were quite gross and creepy. At the same time, the main character doesn't really see them as a threat, which is also interesting because I like that. I like that that nature is not like the enemy, but there is just like some symbolism there. So yeah, I'm really intrigued where this goes. So far I have no idea what the overall solution could be, like what's going on, what does it have to do with the sister. Something I don't really love so much is some of the discussions that the characters are having now that our main character is back with her family, because there is a lot like blaming and shaming, I guess, because our main character decided to leave after one of her like most important family members died. She's left the family because she couldn't really handle all the grief around her. And I don't know, as someone who also decided to leave their family for multiple reasons and just adding a lot of distance and using that to kind of heal, I don't really like the like shaming and blaming that is going on right now. Like if this is the correct path for someone, I don't think that you should look down on them, because we live in a world where like family values are so high and you have to forgive your family members everything. You have to stay with your family members no matter what. And that can create very, very toxic environments. And while I don't think that this is the case for the family in this book, I still feel like pushing this narrative of you should have stayed here and you should have worked through it with us together and stuff like that. It's like a little bit too pushy and a little bit too much for me personally. So we'll see where it goes. I'm intrigued and I'll update you once I've finished the book. So I did finish Bad Cree last night and I really enjoyed it. I decided to give it 4 stars. The ending definitely surprised me a little bit because I thought, similar to White Horse that it wasn't gonna be paranormal, but that there would be like an explanation for the horror bits that were going on. But in this one, we actually do have a paranormal conclusion, which is kind of a metaphor for yeah, something else that is going on. I don't want to spoil it. If you want to you know, read the book yourself, you know, I'm not gonna say anything. But yeah, this was a really interesting book. I think comparing it to White Horse, I still enjoyed White Horse more. I think that it just kept the suspense a little bit better. I enjoyed the like edginess of the main character a little bit more, and I think it just dealt with more themes. I think that Bad Cree also has a very strong emphasis on like family and these kind of themes. But then there is also another theme that is kind of like the explanation for what's going on. And I feel like this could have been explored more. Like, this is quite a short book, so I think a little bit more page time could have been used to explore this topic more. It's more like hinted at, and there is some like parts that explore it, but I think it could have been even more. And I think that, as I said, just there were a couple of bits that dragged a little bit for it being such a short book. So I think 4 stars is absolutely fine. As I said, I would recommend this book if you're interested, but I think White Horse in general is just a little bit of a better suspense novel. I think I'm going to go into a couple of small spoilers if you've read the book. I would love to hear your thoughts, but I don't want to drag this out too much because I have to head to work in a second. But yeah, the like paranormal thing that is the like reason why this stuff is happening in the book, I think is very interesting. We have this like a mythical being that came to be because of the greed of the oil company people, and when they left again because they had gotten all of the oil out of the ground, the greed monster basically, I forgot what it's called because I'm always really bad when I only hear words. I can't remember them well. I think it's a Wurth. It just, yeah, it just stayed there and was looking for other prey. I think the kind of explanation why this family gets sucked into it just wasn't enough for me. And I think especially because our main character had left the area and then started kind of dreaming about this monster, I just didn't really get it. I think there were a couple of plot holes. Like, I'm pretty sure there would have been like easier targets, especially targets that were in the actual area and not like in a completely different city, like hundreds of kilometers away. So that was something that I didn't really understand. And we have this whole like dream idea that this family has some kind of like dream abilities, like all of the women in the family have them. But we never get any explanation for that, which I wouldn't particularly mind, but I think it is a very important puzzle piece to the question why this family was targeted, and in that sense, I did not get enough explanation for me personally. So it is definitely more of a like monster horror where in the end, it's just basically killing the monster and everything's fine. I also talked a little bit, I think, about the like whole messaging with the family aspects and that I wasn't always sure how I liked them. I think in the end I was fine with it, but as I said, sometimes with a family, if it is not healthy for you, it is okay to leave and to start your own life. And I think because this family wasn't that, I think this family tried to be very supportive, and even though it didn't always like work or it didn't always lead to the best choices, the undertone was still very loving and caring. But that's not true for all families, and so I always struggle a little bit with this kind of messaging that you kind of have to be there for your family, forgive them all of their mistakes and stuff like that. But as I said, I think ultimately I was fine with it just because of the way this family was portrayed, but I do like a bit more nuance with that theme. So yeah, overall I really enjoyed it. I think the way the crows were added was also very interesting, but again not very much explained, so especially because they seem to be so helpful to our main character during this like end battle scene bit. We don't really know why, and they seem to have like a very particular power against this monster, because I think it was the crow feather that also protected Tracy. I'm not sure if I understood that correctly, but that's what I thought. So again, this is not really explained, you know. I just wanted a little bit more of the whys, I guess. So yeah, overall, as I said, 4 stars, really liked it. I think it's a fun story that has a little bit of like draggy bits in the middle, but ultimately I thought it was fun and interesting. I liked following the main character, and that's it, I think, for this book. So right now, would recommend White Horse a little bit more, but if you've already read that, I think you will also enjoy Bad Cree. So I'm now halfway through Moon of the Crusted Snow, and I wanted to give you a quick update. Now, this book is not exactly what I thought it would be. I had read so many reviews talking about how this is so suspenseful and how it's a real page turner and stuff like that. So now being halfway through, I'm kind of like, when? Because like so far it is a good story. I am enjoying it, but nothing is very suspenseful like in the traditional sense to me yet. So what we see is basically this community of people on a res, and then they have a power outage and the satellites don't work anymore, TV's gone, power is gone, internet is gone, everything, telephones don't work anymore. And we're following this community as they're trying to deal with that, but it becomes more and more clear that all of these things are not coming back on. So they start to wonder what is going on in the rest of the world because they're so remote they can't really reach anyone. So they don't really know until now, at around the halfway point of the book, people from outside get to the res, and they start to learn what's really going on. So we have this like apocalyptic feeling, but in a very, very remote location. And so far it's a lot about just keeping people calm, getting them to be mindful of how much of their like leftover power they're spending and stuff like that. So I guess what we can see is how this community is so much better prepared for something like that, just because they're not so dependent on all of the electricity, the internet, and everything like that. So while for a like modern city, this is like worst case scenario, nobody knows what to do, this community of people is quite well prepared. And so I guess the suspense is not really happening yet, because we can see that they are prepared. They know what they're doing, and it's more interesting to see that, to follow them. And I hope that the more suspenseful things will start happening now that I'm halfway through. There are a couple of developments that definitely point in this direction, but I was really surprised just how slow the beginning of the story is. Not that this is a bad thing, it's just not what I expected after reading all of the reviews. So I'm really intrigued to see how it continues now, and yeah, I'm just very interested. And there is a big spider in one of my plants right now, and I need to take care of that. Okay, the spider apocalypse has been prevented. Where was I? I have no idea. But yeah, I was talking about the book, obviously. One thing I'm still not quite sure about is the audiobook. I feel like just because of the kind of like rhythm it is read, it's also not suspenseful to me, because it's more read in a like very soothing and a little bit funny tone. So yeah, I don't know, it's just the vibes don't match up for me personally. So that's something I struggle with a little bit. And then for our main character that we're following, we are basically following Evan, who is yeah, one of the like maintenance guys. So he does like odd little jobs around the res. And so he's quite involved in everything because he has to be everywhere and do all the things. So we get to see quite a lot of what is going on through his perspective. And he also has a wife and 2 children. So we also see the family life of them, how it is impacted. And the relationship with his wife is a very loving one, which is always lovely to see represented, especially in thriller horror books, because yeah, we need more representation of just healthy relationships, let's be real. So yeah, I am enjoying it. I'm intrigued to see what happens in the second half, and I will update you when I'm finished, and then I'll let you know the final verdict of this vlog. Okay, it's time for the final update. I did finish Moon of the Crusted Snow last night, and I did enjoy this, but it was very different from what I thought it would be. So I decided to give it 3.5 stars in the end. I definitely thought it would be more thrillery, even more suspense, I guess. But this is more of a quiet suspense that we get. So there is definitely this underlying feeling of things going wrong and our main character not really being able to put his finger on what it is. But I felt like in the latter half, where things should have really taken off, we have quite a few bigger time jumps that made me disconnect from the story, unfortunately. So I felt like this book should have been longer, or maybe just a little bit more concise in the beginning, and then the second part a little bit more fleshed out, because then we have these moments where like weeks or even months go by where the tension is building, but we don't see any of that, and we just see kind of like the main character dealing with that. So at one point he starts going out into the woods to build a teepee so they could escape from their community, for example, but we don't really know what led him to do this. So that was really sad. That was really the thing that I wanted to see, like this creeping dread that there was something wrong, or there was something wrong coming, and then we only get these like flashlights of that, and then the ending happens quite quickly as well. So I was unfortunately a little bit disappointed by that. I really thought that this would be a great like kind of apocalyptic horror, and it was just calmer and yeah, more inwards focused than I thought it would be. And apart from that, I really enjoyed the book. I think that if there weren't these time jumps, I would have enjoyed it even more, but it's not that I did not have a good time with it. And I think that from one point onwards, it is quite obvious to see what's gonna happen. And I also liked the kind of lore behind the story that I actually got. Like at one point there is a description of a dream, and I was like, oh my god, it's this thing, and then it was actually that thing. So I was very proud of myself, because I'm not really good with these kind of lore things in the United States and Canada. So yeah, that was really cool, and I did enjoy what the book was trying to say. I think it could have even done it a little bit more strongly. There is a point where it's like said out loud, like they actually have the discussion of like kind of like the white savior idea, and then also how white people are the reason why these indigenous communities maybe won't be able to survive so well anymore if there is some kind of an apocalypse. So I really liked that, but I felt like it could have been brought up again more if we wouldn't have had those big time jumps, but if we would have seen what happens in between those times. So yeah, we not only get the like verbal duel there, but we also get to see it for ourselves a little bit more. So yeah, overall I thought it was a good book. I would definitely recommend it if you're interested, but I just wanted it to be a little bit more even. So looking back at all three books that I read in this vlog, I would say my favorite one is definitely White Horse, and I just had the most fun with it, and I just thought it was like the best in the execution of the themes and what was going on. And then because I have a little bit of a time gap between the two books, it is quite hard to rank Bad Cree and Moon of the Crusted Snow for me. I would say they are quite similar in my enjoyment levels, but I think if you enjoyed White Horse already, then Bad Cree is the perfect next book to read because it is very similar to the whole setup. While if you want something very different that still has these like mythological backgrounds of Indigenous people, then I would say Moon of the Crusted Snow has a very different storyline, very different characters, but still that like idea behind the horror, I would say. So yeah, I would definitely recommend all three of these books. I enjoyed all three of these books quite a lot. I also liked the audiobooks for White Horse and Bad Cree more, while I did struggle quite a bit in the beginning with the audiobook of Moon of the Crusted Snow. I did get into it more, but as I said before, I just felt like because the voice was almost a little bit cheery in a way, the suspense also didn't quite work for me, maybe the same way that a different narrator would have done it. So also keep that in mind if you want to pick these books up, that maybe you listen to a sample of Moon of the Crusted Snow before you get to it, whether it works for you. But the other two, I didn't have any issues with the audiobooks. So that's it for this video. If you want, recommend me some more horror books by Indigenous authors. Like obviously we have Stephen Graham Jones, but there's probably so much more out there. So if you have any recommendations, I would love to hear about that. And I will talk to you very soon. Bye!